All right. Well, thanks for coming back to the Bigfoot Society podcast. I have the privilege of having with me uh, Mr. Andrew Smith, the executive director of the Braxton County Convention and Visitors Bureau and curator of the Flatwoods Monster Museum. That is amazing. Is there anything else that you would want to put into your introduction, sir?
No, not really. I almost want to throw in filmmaker, but I made one short film and it's not incredible. But I would like it if your listeners would go watch it. But otherwise, you pretty well have it covered.
Perfect. And we are actually we're gonna hit that later. So don't
Okay,
worry.
great.
That's an awesome film. But first thing I need to get off of I need to figure out one thing. I need to get this off my chest. So the Moth Boys being sponsored by Braxton County, is this a legit thing?
Yeah.
Because I checked with Jacob and he said it's legit, but I want to check both sides here. Like it's legit.
Yep. It's legit.
That's amazing. How cool is that, dude? Did you
Yeah.
have to go through lots of red tape to get that happening? You're like, hey, these guys are cool. Let's do it.
No, not really. You know, there's kind of a limit to how much money I can sort of discretionarily spend. And
Got you. Yeah, okay,
it sort
great.
of
Yeah.
it stays under that. I've got a board of directors,
Oh
but I've
wow,
been doing this for going on 8 years.
man.
So they trust me. As a matter of fact, I have more seniority than any of my board of directors at this point. Um, so they trust me. But yeah, that was just something that I wanted to try out, and I plan to do more in the future in 2021 for sure.
That's fantastic, dude. I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. So what is let's say someone comes into the museum and they're like, whoa, what's this? And I have no idea I'm getting into. I'm just trying to get a map of the area. And you're like, well, check this out. It's a Flatwoods Monster Museum. What is your spiel that you give people? Like, there's got to be like an elevator pitch, like, this is the Flatwoods Monster Museum. Do you have one of those?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I try not to have to give that
Okay.
because because being asked what is this, like 10 different times a day throughout the
Oh,
day in
yeah.
the summer. I try to deflect that as much as possible, mainly because you're in the place dedicated to it. You could read it, you could
True.
watch it, you could, look at all the displays and stuff. So you can figure it out. But
Right.
if pressed, or if I'm on a podcast, uh,
Right.
this
Like
is
right now.
what I say. Yeah, because burning up all this time and effort for one person for this 15 minutes, then I got to do it again in 15 more minutes. That's not fun. But to do it
Right.
for you and all your listeners all at one time, that's
Totally.
awesome. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh, but yeah, I'll tell you about it.
All
So
right.
the Flatwoods Monster incident was a sighting that took place in downtown Flatwoods in
Mm.
1952, September 12th. There were a bunch of children playing on the field next to the Flatwoods Elementary School. And it was about 7 o'clock or so in the evening. And as they were playing, they see this light streak across the sky. And all the kids saw it, and it appeared to land on a nearby hilltop. So I want to say five. It kind of depends on the retelling that you read and what your preferred version of the story is. But the way that I
Okay.
understand, five children aging in ranges of age 9 up to age 15
Mm.
go to the hill that this object appeared to land on, and it was very nearby, less than a mile. So as they're heading that direction, in order to get to this hill, they actually have to go down a road, or go up a road rather, where the May boys live. And the May boys were two of the boys involved, Eddie and Fred May. And so they stopped at their house where their mother Kathleen was, and their sister. So they told Kathleen what was going on, and so she decided that she better join them. And there was also a neighbor, or not a neighbor, a cousin of Kathleen's visiting. And I'm not, again, conflicting reports. It's either, and this is Gene Lemon, and he was 18 or 19 at the time and was a Army National Guardsman. And he was either visiting a next door neighbor who was probably also a relative, or was visiting Kathleen. But like I said, he would have been either a cousin or a second cousin to Kathleen. And Kathleen was 32 at the time. I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
mention that earlier. So
Okay.
she got him, since he's this Army National Guardsman, in case anything sort of not good happens, that he might be able to
Right.
help.
Right.
So this whole ragtag group of people uh, go up this hill and cross a small piece of pasture land. And I want to set the scene for people. If they hear the word Flatwoods as a town, they would probably assume it's a flat area. This
It
is
doesn't look flat from what I've
no.
seen. No.
There's no part of Flatwoods that's flat. Not
Nope.
one square inch that's flat. Um, so even this pasture field is not flat. It's slightly uphill. But they
Okay.
would have to cross one fence into the pasture field, across the pasture field, and over the other fence. And there was a fairly rough but like tractor path on the other side of that fence. So they were walking up that path, and so at this point it's darker. They're under, the forest canopy, so they're walking at this point. They're not running. And as they're walking up the hill, they notice at the top of the hill there is a strange pulsating red light
Mm.
at the top of the hill that they assume is whatever it was they just saw in the sky. And as far as they know, nobody's ever noticed it there before. So this seems like a new, whatever it is, it's new. And so they continue walking toward that. And as they're fixated on that, they notice this awful smell kind of fill the air around
Okay.
them. And I believe some of the witnesses described it as like a sulfuric or like ozone smell. Um, like I believe one of the boys mentioned that it smelled like somebody was welding. That sort of smell hanging in the air. And they sense movement from their left in the woods. So they shine their one flashlight in that direction and see this um, 10-foot tall, roughly 10-foot tall figure in the woods and appearing to float toward them and not making much noise. But as it got closer to them, emitting a hissing sound. And they also believe that light was coming from, the only way to describe it, its eyes.
Wow.
But whether or not it was its eyes or not, they're not sure. But needless to say, they only saw it for a brief period of time because they were so frightened. They turned,
Mm.
ran back down the hill, jumping fences as they went. And uh, when they got back home, they called the sheriff, and the sheriff and his deputy was dispatched out. And but by the time they got there, it took a little bit of time. And by the time they got there and went up on the hill, the light that was pulsating at the top of the hill had gone, and there was no 10-foot tall figure in the woods that they
Wow.
saw or that they reported. The only thing that they witnessed, that the witnesses also saw, was the or encountered, was the smell. The smell was still lingering in the air. It had become more faint at this point, but they could smell it. But
Mm.
otherwise, as far as I know, there was no other evidence retrieved, unless it was retrieved the following day when a small group of um, I think these were also Army National Guardsmen, but I'm not 100% sure, were dispatched to the area to come check it out as well. But they were ordered, according to the commander um, that was operating there that day. They were ordered to, if they found any evidence, to send it back to DC for any
Oh,
sort of
wow.
analysis. So if anything was found the next day, we wouldn't know about it anyway.
Wow, that's something else, man.
Uh-huh.
A cool story. Um, in your opinion, do you think we're when we're talking about uh, Flatwoods monster, we're talking about probably a space visitor or maybe something from Earth? What do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
In my estimation, if it was something that was not misidentified,
Mm,
which there's a lot of things that have to line up for
yeah.
that to be something conventional, at least for me. Um, and I know Freddie May, one of the witnesses who was 10 at the time, and that's something that he often wondered too, if he saw something that was alien or just some sort of piece of technology that he just wasn't aware of. But the thing that gives him pause and gives me pause too is he said what he saw, um, he's never seen anything like it since. So it stands to reason if it was some sort of piece of technology, at some point it would become, you know, not secret. It would become, something that you could go to a museum maybe and see. And there's nothing that really looks like that. So that's
Mm,
what makes him think that if it's not something earthly, that's the reason why, that's sort of why he thinks that. But even he's not sure, but it would stand to reason, uh, potentially something coming from, definitely coming from the sky, and
yeah.
whether that's outer space or not, that's up for debate.
Dude, what if like at the end of like 180 days, you know what I'm talking about? It's like the government comes out with all the stuff and it's all Flatwoods Monster. Would that just blow your mind, Andrew? Like you would be the luckiest man alive because it'd be like, come to the museum. The government just said it's here. Let's party. Admission is
Right.
free, but you can buy this amazing T-shirt. Foreshadowing
Right.
for future questions, but
Yeah, it would be
oh
interesting if
man,
more info came out about the Flatwoods Monster. But yeah,
yeah.
uh, I have to think that there's a lot more to it than just our event. But if it was tied to something greater, that would be interesting.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. It leads into a question from Instagram. So Jonathan at Western Bigfoot Exploration, uh, he says, "Can you clarify the whole deal with the gas that people say was present after the sightings? Do you have any more thoughts about that gas at all, or?" Um, I mean, there's not really a lot to go on except for
No.
stories, right? It's like once gas is gone, it's gone. Like
Right.
I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, as far as I know, it had dissipated to the point of not being noticeable the next day, because I don't recall anybody ever talking about it other than
Mm.
that night. And of course, the local sheriff wouldn't have had anything to analyze
Yeah. Oh no,
what
definitely
what
not.
was hanging in the air. So between, uh, a beautician with no scientific background, a
Right.
handful of kids, and a couple of sheriffs and deputy. There's nothing to go on other than their best bet at just describing what they saw. So there's really no further detail other than
Yeah.
what would be a guess. Everything beyond that would be a guess.
It's so close to the show Stranger Things. It's scary because you got the kids, you got the deputy Hopper or Sheriff Hopper, and then you've got beautician Joy. Like I was looking at photos that you have. Like there's some videos and you have the photos. I watched a lot of things in the last few days, but it's like you get Stranger Things vibes from this story. It's such a cool story.
It's funny. I'm a big fan of that series, and I'd never thought about that. But now that you mention it, I'm going to have to look into the origin of that, and I wonder if they took any inspiration from it. But yeah, there's a lot of real similar vibes for sure.
Yeah, I know it takes inspiration from a lot of things, and people are gonna be calling me out like, "Oh, you should know that, Jeremiah." But it's like it's. I know it's other stuff in there too as well. But well, let's continue. So, are there sightings of the monster that have been reported recently, or not really anything in recent times? Then
Nothing that bears a great resemblance to the Flatwoods
okay,
Monster. Nothing that I know of. Now, what's interesting is, I'm appearing on a podcast called the Bigfoot Society. So
true.
I should mention, our area does actually have some reports of Bigfoot encounters.
I bet.
And here's what's crazy though, is I wasn't even aware of them up until maybe a year and a half ago. And I started looking into it, and I found at least four or five, and there's one really weird one. Um, and I'm gonna have if you had to put a gun to my head to tell me, you know,
Which I
it,
wouldn't.
like, but like
We'll
if it
just
was like
clear that up.
do you think this is real?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
have to say not in the least, but it was reported in a newspaper. But
Wow.
it was
Okay. Cool.
reported
Cool.
a long time ago. I'm trying to actually bring
Mm.
it up so I say all the right things. But it was reported in a newspaper in Florida, and it was a wild man report.
From your
Um,
area.
yeah, well,
Wow.
it's from Flatwoods.
Okay.
Um, and I'll bring it up right now. It's actually, if you go to our website, braxtonwv.org, you can find
Mm.
all this stuff on here. But we've got a page just dedicated to the reported Flatwoods, or reported Bigfoot sightings that we know of. And this one that I
Oh,
was talking,
awesome.
it's called the Flatwoods Wild Man, and
Mm.
this supposedly took place. No, it was published March 8th, 1919, in
Oh, wow.
the Evening Telegram, um, in I believe Tampa, Florida,
That's
if I'm
crazy.
not mistaken. I might be getting that part wrong, but I know it is Florida. I know it's Florida. But anyway, but it goes into talking about a guy, the witness talking about going to a lodge meeting, but didn't say which
Mm.
lodge, but just a lodge
Okay.
meeting, and a guy coming out of the woods, dressed in like basically a loincloth, uh, scaring the heck out of everybody, and that this guy
What?
pulled out a pistol. You pulled out a pistol and started shooting at whatever this thing was, and that it ran back
Yeah.
to the woods. The only thing that's interesting though is it mentions people by name, and I think it mentions like specific locations, like so and so's house or so and so's garage. And I've been trying to figure out if I can confirm if any of these people would have ever lived or existed in Flatwoods. But so far, I've
Mm.
not been able to turn up anything. But again, this report's from 1919.
Right. Right.
So who knows? But I've actually talked to Seth Breedlove about this from Small Town Monsters, and he
Totally.
he he agrees with me that he thinks that this was just written to sell a few more papers in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
But
That they
uh,
just randomly picked an area like
right,
in the
like
north.
some
That
place,
place sounds good.
yeah. But it's so funny that they would have picked
Yeah.
Flatwoods of all
Right.
places.
Yeah. It's very
Flatwoods,
weird. Yeah.
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 But yeah, there's other stories that go back, more recently, and I actually know really well the owner of the Sutton Lake Marina, and he's
Ah.
told me that, and how he didn't ever tell me about it sooner. But whenever I first started digging up um, supposed Bigfoot sightings in our area, I talked to him about it. He said, it's funny you mentioned that. Every now and again, we get people renting boats to go around the border of the Sutton Lake to hunt for Bigfoot.
Oh man. No way.
Yeah,
That's
so I don't know if
awesome.
anybody's ever been successful, but
Wow.
I mean, it's enough where people are renting boats. So,
Time for another museum in Flatwoods.
well, actually, there's some folks here in my area that have a like kind of a throwback store called Mountain Laurel
Okay.
Country Store,
Yep.
and they actually have a lot more room than they're currently utilizing. So I'm trying to twist their arm to have like a West Virginia Bigfoot museum.
Dude. Oh, Andrew, do it. Come on. That's amazing. Like, that's such a good idea. Dude, I love it. You should go for that.
Well,
100%. Dude,
I'll make sure they go and listen to this podcast. That way they get a little bit more motivation.
that's for real. So let's say you're just meeting someone for the first time and you're like, hey, I'm Andrew. I work, I'm the curator for the Flatwoods Monster Museum. And like, what's your really basic summary of like, how do you explain what that is? Like, what is the museum?
I don't think I've ever had to explain it. Now that I think about it, um, I don't really. I end up not really talking to too many people that I don't know pretty intimately and have for a long time.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Um, what would I say? I don't know. I would probably just start off with, run the Flatwoods Monster Museum, and I'm sure the questions would ensue. So then I would just answer them as they came. I really don't have much of an answer. In honestly, in all honesty, the Flatwoods Monster Museum was a kind of a slow development. Um, it
Okay.
started out as you mentioned at the top of the show. I'm the executive director for the Braxton County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I've worked for the bureau for almost 8 years.
Oh wow.
And, but the Flatwoods Monster Museum has only existed since October of 2018. So
Mm,
I was doing a lot for them way before this.
okay.
And at our last office location, we had like kind of an area for area information and that sort of thing, like displays for area information. And we had some extra room, so we had a glass case that was sitting around and not doing
Mm-hmm.
anything. I just dusted it off and moved it to the front of the storefront or the office, and just started filling it with stuff. And the first things I started filling it with was Flatwoods monster related items,
Sure.
because I found it interesting, and I noticed that a lot of people visiting the area or visiting my office, if they weren't there for something pretty normal and conventional, it was that. Like that was either it. It was either something like you said before, like they are looking for a roadmap, or they're wanting to know anything they can do that relates to the Flatwoods Monster. So
Totally. Yeah. 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 Yep.
yeah, so I thought having some displays about it would be interesting, and that just grew and grew. As soon as it started, it just didn't stop growing. And then about mid 2018, we had to find a new place for our office.
Okay.
And so my board, in their infinite wisdom, they decided we needed to be somewhere in a downtown area of
Mm-hmm.
Braxton
Yep.
and have a big visitor center. So so my thought was we don't need a big visitor center, but if we're going to have a big visitor center, it needs to also be a Flatwoods Monster Museum.
Mm,
So my board would okayed it, and so that's what we did. So this also acts as the Braxton County Visitor Center, uh, but truth be told, 89% of all foot traffic, if not more, are explicitly for the Flatwoods Monster. So it was a good
that's
move.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, totally. No, it's the smartest thing I think you guys could have done. How much is admission to the museum again, Andrew?
$0.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
My goodness. What a
Now I don't
deal.
want anybody to think they're going to be walking into the Smithsonian or anything like that, but it's pretty cool, and we have just about everything you can have relating to the Flatwoods Monster. We have it. We have it on display. We might sell it. So, um, so that's a thing. That's another thing too. Is we carry a whole lot of souvenirs and shirts and stuff like that. Um, so that seems to be half the reason why people show up, is because they want their Flatwoods Monster shirt, and there's no other way to get it. So,
Hey, that leads me into the next Patreon question, actually. The
okay,
segues are incredible in this episode so far.
I'm
Um
great at them.
Jacob Haskin from the Patreon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the Patreon member. Go Patreon. His question is, how do you feel about having the best merch game when it comes to cryptids?
Wow, that's very nice.
I know,
I don't
right?
know if I would agree, but it's very nice.
Wow.
I mean, if you go to the Mothman's gift shop, I mean, it's extensive and it's cool. And they carry, as a matter of fact, some occasionally I straight rip off, an idea.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Don't make
occasionally.
me edit this episode. I'm just
No,
kidding.
don't edit it out. No, because I also think occasionally they borrow ideas from me. Um, so it's okay. And we have a amazing working relationship with the Mothman Museum.
That's
Uh,
good. That's good.
Jeff Wamsley over there
Yep.
has done a lot, for me and for us. As a matter of fact, if anybody is happy that there's a Flatwoods Monster Museum, you could pretty much thank Jeff, um,
Mm.
because I got to meet him a couple times before we actually established it. And anytime we would talk, he would always tell me, why don't you have a Flatwoods Monster Museum? And in my mind, I was wrong, but in my mind, I was thinking nobody'd be interested in a Flatwoods Monster Museum. And he said, yes, they would. I promised they would. So it's sort of his goading that made us do this anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How soon will it be until there's a overly muscular Flatwoods statue in front of your museum?
Well, there's a funny story about that, actually.
Is there really? Yes.
A-
Go
a-
ahead.
a well, it's also kind of a sad one.
Oh, okay. Well,
But this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, that I was looking into the idea of having a statue made to have
oh,
somewhere.
wow.
I didn't even have a place picked out. And I think through different channels, I ended up getting to talk to the man that actually made all those stainless
Yeah.
steel statues that
Yep.
are in Point Pleasant. And a lot of people probably don't know, there's the Mothman one there, but I think he made like
There's a
5
ton of them
others,
there. Yep.
yeah, that are in the town.
Yep.
So I thought, well, that'd be cool if we could get the guy to make us like basically a matching set.
Oh, totally, dude.
That's just not in Point Pleasant. It's here. And I called him and talked to him. And he said if I would have gotten a hold of him like 2 years earlier, he
Oh,
probably could have did it.
no
And
way.
the reason why he couldn't, it was twofold. He said his supplier that he got his stainless steel from
Hmm.
went under,
Oh,
and that he had been pretty ill. I'm pretty sure he died sometime later of
he has
cancer.
passed on. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
and
unfortunate.
so I think he was already dealing with that, you know, pretty late stage. So he would
Hmm.
have been too weak to do it anyway. But
Yeah.
he was so pumped that I called him and talked to him
Oh,
about,
really? Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
and that I
That is
even
so
thought of
cool.
him, which I was pumped to even be able to talk
Wow.
to him.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally.
but that's something we would like to see at some point. Just not
Yeah, you
sure
never
when.
know. Yeah.
Every avenue that we look at for a statue is pretty daggone expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
So what we kind of have in the meantime, it kind of serves the purpose, is our 5 monster chairs
Of course.
that we have
Yep.
all around the county, and they're made of wood, but they're shaped like the monster, and they're 10 feet tall, so they're pretty big and cool looking, and they're chairs you can sit on them, take your selfies and that sort of thing. So we kind of have a stand in the meantime anyway, and a wood structure is a lot cheaper to have made than a
Hmm.
metal sculpture.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Jacob has a follow-up question, which is what's your favorite piece of merch that you've ever had for the museum?
Probably something that's relatively recent.
Okay.
We There is this company based in Japan called Dream Rocket Toys,
Okay.
and they have a rendition of a Flatwoods Monster that I've always loved.
Hmm.
And they've sort of, I think the way that they work, and I could be wrong, but the way that the company works is it's kind of like a piece at a time kind of a deal. Like there's very few pieces that look exactly the same every time. But I found them on Instagram and
Okay.
reached out to them, and the gentleman that um, runs that company, I wouldn't even want to try to pronounce his name because I'll ruin it. But he was very nice and was very excited that I reached out to him, and I was looking into the possibility of getting a custom run made for us, which
Oh,
he
wow.
was incredibly pumped about doing.
Hmm.
So we got a set of limited edition, 100 of them, of
Yep.
clear vinyl toys,
Oh,
um,
man.
direct from
Wow.
Japan. They're each individually numbered 1 through 100, and as we sell them, we mark them off. We have a list. We mark it off. So
Wow.
if someone comes in and has to have number 40, if we have it, we'll sell it to them. But that is my favorite one, just because I never would have dreamed that company would have any interest in doing it. But it turned out he was so excited to do it. So that just made me pumped that an artist in Japan couldn't wait to work with
That's so
this little
cool.
museum in West Virginia.
That is so cool. Um, I've seen pictures of those, and those are amazing. I think they're on your Instagram for the museum. You've got pictures of them, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, and you have to actually go to the museum to purchase those. Like, that's not an online. Like, you got to be there to get them, which is
Yes,
pretty cool.
that's the same with all of our merch that we have that's exclusive to us.
Okay,
If you want it, you got to come get it.
I love it.
Now we do carry a lot of things from other independent artists that also sell on their own. Like for example, Liz Pavlovic,
Oh
who's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
She's great.
West Virginia native. Yeah, so we sell like her pins
Hmm.
that are Flatwoods Monster, and you can buy from her, through Etsy or that sort of thing. But if
Yep,
it's like a T-shirt we have produced or a custom toy, we are the only ones that have it, you have to pay us a visit to come by it. Or
that's awesome.
something that actually happened a lot whenever those first were announced. We had so many people like the next day
I bet.
come in. They would just walk in, and I would come out, and say like, "Hey, is there anything I can help you with?" And they would just do this. They would get their phone, open it up, say, "Yeah, my friend told me to come, and do you have any of these?"
Oh yeah,
Would show me a
yeah,
picture.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I've got those. So there were a lot of people doing chores for
I'm
folks,
sure there were. Yeah,
coming and picking them up.
oh, totally, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Um, what is there a history behind the name Braxy? Braxy is kind of like the nickname for the Flatwoods Monster, right?
yeah, yeah. The history behind that is there's a guy that I know um, whose name is Matthew Smith, and I know him because he's involved with a game convention, like a tabletop game convention
Okay.
that happens in the area. And he was developing a storyline for a tabletop game.
Oh, cool.
And he wanted to involve the Flatwoods Monster.
Mm.
And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, is there any like cute nickname for the Flatwoods Monster? Like Nessie?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You care if I make up one and put it in my game?" I said, "No, go ahead." So
That's
this was probably
awesome.
2016 or so, and
Hmm.
he and I said, "Just let me know what it is." So, like a day or two later, he sent me back a message that just said Braxy with two X's
That is
and an
so
IE.
cool.
I said, "I love it." He's like, "You like it?" I said, "Yep, I love it." I said, "Run with it." So then I said, "Can everybody use that?" He said, "Yeah, go ahead." So we started
Awesome.
using it, and it has stuck.
It has everywhere. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yep.
Greg from the Patreon asks, "Is there a Braxy festival? And if there's not, when will there be one?"
There's not really one. The town of Flatwoods has, over the years, like probably over the last 2 decades, has tried to start one up,
Hmm.
uh, but it's always been kind of hit and miss, and it's always been kind of small scale as well. Um, I've got an idea for
Okay.
how it could be great. However, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to get anybody
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
because a lot of moving pieces that would have to decide to work together
Gotcha.
to happen. So
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
working on that. However, a really good sign was this past year. I know 2020 was, wrecked because of COVID,
Right.
but one shining spot for us was probably, I want to say, sometime in August. It dawned on me that the 68th anniversary of the Flatwoods Monster sighting was going to be on a Saturday,
Mm.
which it's never on a Saturday. So I was thinking, I'm not going to let this Saturday pass without something special happening. And I'll jump through whatever hoops the local health department makes me jump through,
Yep.
and we'll make it work. So what we decided to do was we started out with I'm really good friends with the folks that own the local theater.
Okay.
So the first thought was just to have a little double feature of the Small Town Monster film
Hmm.
and my short film, And if you put those two together, you still don't get 90 minutes, because they actually, due to COVID, they actually had restrictions on double features. Um, but since
Oh,
since put together, they weren't any longer than a feature length film. They could do it. So we
that's
did that,
awesome.
and they were operating at one quarter capacity.
Okay.
Um, so anyhow, so we started off with that, and then I thought, well, that's going to start at 7. It's a Saturday, and I've got this like medium sized gravel lot
Mm-hmm.
beside my building. Now it doesn't belong to us, so I got a hold of the owners and asked. I said, "Hey, can I set up some vendors out there?" Yeah, sure, no problem. So we ended up having 6 vendors come out and have tables. Um, let's see, Small Town Monsters, of course, came and Seth came and set up. Um, we had Les Odell come
Nice. Yep.
from West Virginia, Cryptids and Strange Encounters,
Mm-hmm.
and as his special guest, he brought along the Moth Boys.
So
Um,
good. Yep.
yeah, and they brought along pepperoni rolls, so they were
Oh
very welcome.
man, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and
Wow.
then we had Liz, Liz that I mentioned before.
Yep.
We had the Weird and Wild West Virginia guys, um, and we had Dave Spinks, the author and investigator.
Oh, cool.
So other than Seth, a whole bunch of very friendly to us West Virginia natives and people that had not been able to attend anything all year. So
It's a
they were
solid
just
crew.
yeah, they were just
Yeah.
pumped to get out of the house. so
So cool.
so we had to set up an outside space where the whole time during the outside space everybody had to wear masks, and we
Mm-hmm.
had to limit a maximum of 20 people at any given time coming in there.
Okay.
But it turned out that day there was like a perfect amount of trickle of people coming in and out that at
Nice.
no point was it ever an issue. We had people there starting from when we set up at 12, at noon, going all the way to when they shut down at 7. And then for our screening, I believe there were about 70 tickets sold,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty much max for that place at a quarter capacity. So all in all, it kind of was as good as it could have been. I don't think we were able to actually start promoting it. It had less than a month of
Oh
promotion,
wow.
and still that many people showed up. So
That's
that was a
awesome.
really good test run.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was.
so that went really well. So I would like to at least keep doing something on that scale in the future, but I would like for it to be bigger than that. And I just realized I took like 15 minutes to answer that guy's question, but
Which it's fine. Like I would rather like do not worry about it. Do you feel like the Flatwoods Monster has always been popular, or do you think that it is popular right now more because of Fallout, or how do you view that? Because I know the Fallout bump just
yeah,
made Mothman and Flatwoods and all those dudes go nuts, right? Like that must have been a trip when that roller coaster hit.
it was a trip. It was kind of a perfect storm. But I
Yeah.
would say, the Flatwoods Monster has had its dedicated fans for a long, long time, and a lot of those folks are like, I don't want to use the word influential because that makes it kind of feel dirty, but you know what I mean.
Right, right.
They're people that once they get excited about something, before you know it, it's going to bleed into thousands of people, and then it gets bigger and bigger. So,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
no, I think the interest has always been there. But I think a couple things has kind of kept it down for the last couple decades, and I think the main thing was just the sheer lack of anything to do in the area that had to do
Gotcha.
with the
Yeah, yeah.
monster. Now,
Yep.
going back sometime in the '90s, that that sign that says "Welcome to Flatwoods, Home of the Green Monster" was put up.
Yeah. Yep.
So for the longest time, people would stop there and take a picture with it. But like that was kind of it. That's
Okay.
all you could really do. And so we started to develop those, that little display that I had at my old office. And then we started those chairs, which that project started in 2015. And then in 2016, there was a local dairy bar in the area called The Spot that was getting new ownership. And that new owner came to me and said that they wanted to make it Flatwoods Monster related. Is there anything I could do to help? So there was that. And then when we moved our office and have a bona fide Flatwoods Monster Museum, that's just made it to where it's cut loose. And like at the same time when we were establishing the museum is when Fallout came out. Um, so
Perfect.
unfortunately, though, if I would have had the museum like 2 years sooner, I bet the museum would have been in the game. But I'm sure
Oh,
development,
snap. Yeah, it totally
yeah,
would have been. Yeah,
yeah.
just like, oh man. I didn't even
But that's
think
okay.
of that.
That's
But
okay.
it's cool. It's
Yeah,
cool. But yeah, it would have
but
been
I'm
cool.
sure development was finished by the time we moved.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was that, and then the History Channel had the miniseries or the no, I think it was 2 seasons of this show
The
called Project Blue Book,
Yep, yep.
and the Flatwoods Monster was featured in episode 2.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm sure that got
Oh,
millions of
yeah.
views.
Yep.
So yeah, all those things collided to just be a perfect storm. And I'm not only happy for what Fallout did for us, I'm happy for what Fallout did for the little town of Grafton, where the Grafton
Mm,
monster was seen. Uh,
exactly. Yep.
That was a lot less known. I know I didn't come to know about it until probably 2017.
Oh, wow.
Um, and it almost was like that Fallout to a lot of people anyway. It brought up the notoriety and like the gravitas of the stories to like the same level.
Mm.
Like whereas Mothman's always been this, he's sort of the big daddy.
He's the top dog. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got you. Yep.
he got his feature film in
Yep.
2020, never looked back.
Right.
Uh, but but Fallout has almost kind of leveled the playing field, and a town like
Totally.
Grafton, can, yeah, again, just like the same thing I was saying earlier, when you start getting into, like it can start to feel kind of dirty when you're like, boy, it could really help the area. But it's true,
I don't
and
think there's
these
anything
places
wrong with
need
that
to
though.
do
Like
what?
help the air. Like if you're
Yeah.
helping the area, that's amazing, right? No one
Yes.
wants to see Flatwoods go like disappear. Like,
Right.
I mean, if it helps the area, then do it. Like, yeah,
Right.
totally. Yep. Um, this is a grenade of a question because you said you've done this for 8 years.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna limit it. Okay, I'm gonna limit it. Like, what's your top three if I was coming to Braxton County and I was like, what's my top three bucket list? Like top things I have to do that are awesome in Braxton County.
Why are you coming for? Like, is it just a random Wednesday, or
That's a
are
good
you coming for a
question.
weekend?
Weekend.
And what season is it?
Ooh.
Is it warm?
Some That's warm. Yeah, that's warm.
Okay, then, well, you got to come check out the Flatwoods Monster Museum and all the things
Totally.
you do related to the monster. But you can knock out all the monster stuff in like a day or a half a day.
Nice.
But otherwise, I would say we've got two fantastic lakes that offer boating and fishing and swimming. Um, so I would say go swimming because it's
Nice.
awesome. It's like going to the beach, but the water isn't salty and there's no sharks.
I
So
love it.
it's perfect.
Very cool.
You won't get stung by a jellyfish. Um, so I would do that, and then the third thing would probably, it probably before COVID, it would have been go eat at Cafe Semino. And
Mm,
I'm hoping before too long, the third answer will still be go eat at Cafe Semino.
okay.
But as of right now, uh, unfortunately, like a lot of great restaurants in America, they're taking this harder than just about anybody
Oh,
in
totally. Yeah, yeah.
our
Yep.
area. So I'm hoping that third thing will be go eat at Cafe Semino.
That is an amazing bucket list. Is there so Point Pleasant has the Mothman pizza? Is there an equivalent of that in Flatwoods, like Flatwoods Monster something?
Yes, at the
Yeah,
spot that I was telling you about earlier,
dairy spot.
they have
Yeah.
these great sandwiches that they call their signature saucer sandwich,
Okay.
and there's
Nice.
like 4 of them, but there's one that's called the Flatwoods Monster, and
Oh,
it is
snap.
good.
Oh,
So
man.
that's what I would recommend if you want to eat something monster related. You get that sandwich, and you will not have any complaints. I don't think
I'm loving it.
it's like
Um,
ham, turkey, salami,
oh,
and
geez.
there's this great. I think they just call it red sauce, but this great red sauce that you dip it into and eat it, and it's real good.
I'm sold. I'm totally sold. Let's talk about the lantern for a little bit.
Okay,
Summarize what the film The Lantern is, and
okay.
so this is a film that was created by yourself, right? Like you're the main person behind this. So could you summarize what the film is about for people that haven't seen it?
Sure. It's a 22-minute long film with credits included, that I made, that details the history and the creation of, as far as I know, the original novelty item
Mm,
that picked the Flatwoods Monster. Um, the man that still creates them today is the same guy that created them way back when. Well, what's funny is he's not sure exactly when it started. It's a toss up for him whether it's like somewhere between 1968 and 1970,
okay.
somewhere in that ballpark. So they were looking for, it was him along with his civic group that he worked with called the JCs, which stood for the Junior Chamber of Commerce,
Mm-hmm.
and they were looking for a way. They were basically a civic group that a bunch of do-gooders basically, and
Okay.
looking for a way to fund their activities. So they wanted to make something and like sell it as a fundraiser. So they wanted to do something Flatwoods Monster related. So John reaches out to some folks that he knows and ends up coming up with these ceramic figurines. And if you can see behind me, this is
Yep.
actually my movie poster.
So you got to
Um,
go to the YouTube channel. You got to see the poster he's pointing to right now. Because if you
yeah,
don't, yeah, it's
but
cool.
so they made these, and they were like 12 inches tall. They were a ceramic um, figure in more or less the likeness of the Flatwoods Monster, based off of this drawing um,
Okay.
that was done based on Kathleen May's testimony.
Very
Um,
nice.
so those were made, and I believe the first, basically they did two batches early on of like 500 apiece, sold those, but interest kind of trickled out about them, and they stopped selling them after a while. And then sometime in the 80s, John decided to start back up making them again, and he's been making them ever since. So it's same guy, same design,
Wow.
same molds, and they're still, and they're still produced to this day. They're made uh, uh, more or less like a handmade process in Marietta, Ohio. And if you watch my documentary, it actually goes through toward the end like a step by step of how they're manufactured and how they've always been manufactured. And they're still produced, like I said, to this day. And John will mail order those. We sell them here, and a few other places sell them as well. But he thinks he's sold more of them in the last year than what's
Hmm.
ever sold before then. So,
Really? That
but
is
it
very
was,
interesting.
yeah. And the reason why I wanted to make the movie was, there's been a lot of creative work done in the Flatwoods Monster, whether in retelling just the story as it happened or
Right.
in like fan fiction. But I've always really been interested in the story of the lantern and how it was this first novelty item done by this little civic group in this little town in the middle of West Virginia. And it was just a story that I really wanted to tell. I wanted people to know. And an interesting thing about that, about the documentaries, I'm not in it at all, but I was in it as a narrator at one time. And then I showed my buddy Seth a rough cut with my narration in it, and he was like, "Do you want me just to tell you that it's good, or do you want me to give you actual critiques?" I said, "No, please give me actual critiques." And he said, well, one, he said, you don't really have a voice for narration. And two, if the way it's recorded doesn't sound very good. He said, so get somebody good to record it. So
Which is
yeah,
Mark Madsky. Yeah.
which is Mark Matkey. So
Yeah.
I reached out to him and he was pumped to do it. I was surprised. So I sent him the script that I was working off of that I'd written, and basically told him too. I said, you know, if I wrote something and it seems clunky, feel free to fix it. And like within 2 days, he sent me back an audio file and plugged it right into my
Oh
doc.
wow.
So I'm feel pumped that I was able to make a documentary that I didn't have to be in at all. I was able to get all the people to do all the things that I needed them to do, and I didn't have to do it. So what's actually funny is I've had like friends and family, you know, go watch it, and they'll get back a hold of me and say, "I was expecting to see you in this thing. Didn't you make it?" Like, yeah, I made it, but I didn't want to be in it. I'm not the one telling
Yeah.
the story. I don't know the story. I had to get it from other people. So, but it's if anybody wants to watch it, it's free. You can watch it on YouTube for free. You shouldn't even get ads before it plays. It should be no pre-roll or during, unless YouTube's changed something. Or on our Facebook page, it's on there as well. So if anyone wants to go watch it, feel free to go watch it. Probably just search for, excuse me, on YouTube, search for at Braxton WV, and that'll bring up our account. Should be real easy to find at that point. And then, of course, on our Facebook, if you go to the, you know, at Flatwoods Monster Museum and go to our videos, it should be pretty high up on the list. So if anyone wants to check it out for free,
I'm
please.
glad you brought that up because, yeah, another one of Greg's questions was like, "What's the best way to watch your film, The Lantern?" And that answers it. But yeah, I was looking at the last few days. It's actually one of the highest results that comes up if you just type in Flatwoods Monster and filter by view. Like a lot of people have viewed it, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, well, that's great. I didn't know that. And an added
Um,
perk with that, if you, I slightly overestimated how many people were going to come out to that screening that I was telling you about. So
oh yeah, yeah,
I ordered 200 of these posters,
uh huh.
and I still have some. So if you come
Oh,
and buy
cool.
a lantern here in person, you'll get a poster for free for the
That's
film.
awesome.
So
That is
until
awesome.
while supplies last, once they run out, of course, that goes away. But
All right, we got a few more questions at the end.
okay,
Just want to check in. Doing good so far. Doing
yeah, we
well.
can go long. I
Awesome.
got all the time you need.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. I like asking this question to people that have like a museum or what person has walked through the doors of your museum that you did not expect to see or that kind of like, whoa, you're this person. Has that ever happened? Like it just kind of blew you away, like you're not supposed to be here, but
Huh.
or maybe you
Right.
haven't experienced that yet.
Right. Well, no, I can kind of answer that a couple of different ways, but the first thing that comes to my mind, but they came at my invitation.
Okay.
Had I not know they were coming, I would have been floored. And there's this two-piece duo band based out of Nashville called Bird Cloud, and
I saw the pictures of this. Yeah, yeah, totally.
I'm
Yeah.
fans of theirs, and I
Nice.
just happened to see that they were playing in West Virginia. I had no idea if their route took them anywhere close to me, but I reached out to them through their Facebook, told them who I was, about the museum, and if they're going to be traveling route, you know, I-79, and they said that they were. So they stopped in, and they are actually getting there right about 5. So I was able to close down and sort of let them be in there privately and sort of see everything.
Oh,
And
nice.
one of the gals, I think it was Kinsey, uh, she asked if she could wear the mascot head for pictures. So I let her do that. And but they were a hoot, and they're really nice, and they gave me a T-shirt and a record. So they were awesome. And then another story that I have like that, I'm gonna save for your Patreon.
Oh,
yet.
Dude, Andrew, I like the way you work, man. So if you got it, if you want to hear the crazier story, you got
Yeah,
to be a member of the Patreon, like Jacob and Greg, and yeah, $5 a month. We'll talk about that at the end. But good idea, man.
yeah.
We got some weird ones coming up. So who would win in a fight, Flatwoods Monster or Mothman?
I'm gonna default to I can't remember when it was, but I listened to Seth Breedlove's podcast, The Monsteropolis,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
it came up in a recent show of theirs, and he said Flatwoods Monster by a mile. So I'm going to go with Seth and say Flatwoods Monster by a mile.
Okay, now we're gonna make it tougher. So get ready.
Okay.
And when I say Braxy, I'm talking. I think of Braxy as being the normal representation that's seen. Yeah, exactly.
This
Okay,
one.
so you have
Right. Yeah.
Braxy versus Fallout Flatwoods Monster. Who's gonna win? Oh man,
Probably, probably Fallouts, if I had to guess.
because it's like a almost like a Transformers like crazy like
It's
claws
great.
and like roar. Like I haven't played the game, but it's like it looks pretty wild. I
Yeah.
watched the
Teleport. Yeah.
Nerdist video where Jessica Chobot and Andrew Bowser came and chatted with you. But that was pretty cool too. That must have been cool visiting with
That
them. But
that was very cool.
yeah, yeah, man, that game looks nuts. Um, do you have a top? Let's say if I have, well, I know I have people that listen to this podcast that like to consume um, documentaries. They also like to read. Do you have top books to read regarding the Flatwoods Monster that maybe mention it or
Yeah.
anything you recommend?
Well, of course, when it comes to documentaries, if you haven't checked it, check out Small Town Monsters
Totally,
documentary. It's
totally.
great, and it actually has Eddie and Fred May, two witnesses in the documentary.
Hmm.
One of the few times that Freddie has actually allowed himself to be interviewed, and as far as I know, the only time his brother Ed has ever appeared on film.
Oh wow.
Uh, so check that out. As far as books go, there's a few. Of course, Frank Ficino's book always comes up, and it's definitely the thickest. It has the most
Okay.
information. So that's the most exhaustive when it comes to the Flatwoods Monster incident. Um, or George Dudding has a very digestible, short, and fairly inexpensive book on the Flatwoods Monster.
Hmm.
We sell a lot of this book called Monsters of West Virginia,
Okay.
um, that has it's kind of a catch-all for everything West
Oh
Virginia.
nice. That would be
So I
awesome.
think that's why people dig it. Is it's a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
catch-all, and there's a fairly extensive chapter about the Flatwoods Monster in it. Um, Dave Spinks earlier this year, or maybe it was last year. This year has become a blur, but came out with real West Virginia UFOs. So his is
Nice.
specifically on UFO and alien activity in the state, and there's a rather sizable and extensive chapter on the Flatwoods Monster and it as well. So it kind of depends. Like if you want a
Awesome.
general monster book, definitely get the Monsters of West Virginia. If you want a general UFO book for the state, get Dave Spink's book.
Sweet. Sweet.
Yep.
Those are some really solid recommendations. Thank you. I'm gonna definitely put
Mhm.
those in the show notes. Um last audience question. This is from Mr. Michael Shang, author and podcast host of the Moth
Yeah.
Boys. And also, I'll say the actual book because it's rocking. Mothman Learns the ABCs. Check it out. It's actually in the previous episode because I just interviewed him and yeah, in Danner, and it's like it's you got it,
Yeah, I've got it.
dude. I
He
gotta get
got
my
me one.
copies. I gotta get my copy soon. Oh, don't show all the pages though.
I'm not.
Oh, they signed it. Oh,
He
cool.
signed it for me.
You are awesome. Thanks for your support.
Oh yeah.
Two
Yeah.
solid
They're the best.
dudes. Two
Yes.
solid, amazing guys. But his question is, what is your favorite cryptid or cryptid themed movie? Mm.
I'm gonna, in fairness, so that way I don't show my bias. It's not gonna have anything to do with the Flatwoods Monster,
Okay.
and that's what we've been talking about for the last hour. So people need something
Right.
different.
Cool.
So if they're not aware, there was a very short-lived, big, big but short-lived phenomenon that struck right whenever I was at the age of starting to pay attention to things in the
Mm-hmm.
90s, and that is a little something called rods.
Rods.
Rods are
Hmm.
they were my favorite thing until they've pretty much been roundly debunked as an audio, like a visual phenomenon that took place in cameras, like because
Okay.
of how cameras work.
Oh, okay.
So that they've pretty much been thoroughly debunked. But before they were thoroughly debunked, they were the most mysterious things, and I couldn't get them out of my head for years. So rods would be my answer.
Gotcha. Oh, and so was there a movie about rods or
I had seen several TV shows, or maybe one or two TV
really?
shows,
Okay.
and I
Cool.
think there might have been Unsolved Mysteries on
Oh,
rods,
sweet, sweet.
and then
Awesome.
though Monster Quest
Oh,
covered
dude, for real.
rods.
Ah,
And
yeah,
wouldn't you
yeah,
know
yeah.
it, the one time Monster Quest found an answer, it was to rods, my favorite thing.
Mm,
So, and I probably had planned, like I knew it was going to air like maybe 2 or 3 weeks out, and I was so pumped. I was telling everybody I know, Monster Quest is going to cover rods. You have to check it out. And of course, everybody's like, "What's a rod?" So I'd have to explain it, and then
right.
that showed up, and you can watch that episode. It's on YouTube, Monster Quest rods, and they figure it out. They figure out what it is. So um, it's kind of a bummer that it got figured out. I was so I felt so deflated watching that show, and it's like, oh, that's it. Oh, that's a bummer. But I loved rods, and I still do. They still have a place in my heart. I love
There
them.
you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, we'll end with this. What is your favorite if you would had to think about the town, what is your favorite thing about the town of Flatwoods?
Well, my mom and sister lives there, so I like them an awful lot.
That's a good answer.
But other than that, uh, just and you could say this about most of Braxton County, really, but Flatwoods in particular, you know, it's um it's just a nice down home town where everybody still knows everybody, everybody still
Mm,
looks after everybody. Um, so just the small town vibe of it that probably really has since when the Flatwoods Monster was seen. The only thing changing being technology. Everybody has cable and the internet,
right.
but otherwise, it's still pretty much the same. So, if you want to feel like you go back in time a little bit and maybe, and also experience like the very nice people,
Mhm.
this is
Yep.
to come for that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Everyone when they can um when you're able to definitely check out the Flatwoods Monster Museum. Also, I'll do a little shout out here for the Small Town Monster Squad. Their community they have. There's actually last I checked, they have a Andrew does a walkthrough of the entire museum that's current as of I think it was a month or so. It's been a little bit of time, but it's an amazing
Yeah.
walkthrough, which is really cool. But I mean, it's still on the list to get there actually in person someday. Like it's really cool. But let's say people haven't heard of the Flatwoods Monster. This is their first introduction to it. How is that? What's the best way for people to keep up to date with what's going on there and things of that nature?
Well, definitely, if you are on social media of any kind,
Hmm.
follow us. Everything that's happening, we're probably going to be the first place you'll see it. So, like on Facebook, follow at Flatwoods Monster Museum. On Twitter, where I believe it's at Monster Museum. Instagram at Flatwoods Monster Museum, and on YouTube, at Braxton WV.
Okay.
Go there for all our that's where all of our Flatwoods content lives, as well as other you know, area attractions sort of information.
Nice. Nice. That is awesome. Definitely have those in the show notes as well. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Andrew is gonna stay on, and he's got some stories he already alluded to. He's gonna share, so I'm excited as well to hear what they're gonna be. If you want to hear the extra stories from Andrew, you can help support the podcast. Uh, Things are getting crazy. There's more people joining literally every day. It's pretty wild. Patreon.com/Bigfoot Society. $5 a month. You can hear what Andrew has to say. You can hear crazy ghost stories from Cliff Berkman. There's all sorts of weird stuff in there. We have a good time. But Andrew, thanks so much for coming on again. We love what you're doing. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.